feeling a bit like I'm losing my sense of self/identity. As currently living at home with parents, I don't want to offend, but I also really need my own space, and it's very hard to find. So this is a big theme, I think, for many people, and part of it, of course, is with recent events with COVID-19 and all of that of course has maybe made us feel a little bit more claustrophobic even than ever, for understandable reasons. But of course, part of it is just a kind of a socio-economic thing as well, that it may just be much harder to have our own place, or we just mightn't be set up to do that quite at this point. So whatever the circumstances are, many people do find themselves in that situation where they're house sharing with other people, or they're living with their parents, or they're doing whatever they're doing. So I think the first thing to do is just recognize that this is a common issue. You're not alone in it, and it is a challenge, and it does bring up some difficulties. Of course, there may be advantages to it as well, but the point is, very often when we're in a situation that we haven't consciously chosen, it's not like you have like 5 options and you go, that's the one I'm going to go with, then it starts to feel a bit uncomfortable for that reason anyway. So I think one thing you can immediately do here in the circumstances is to have a plan. So obviously if you have the time and the money and the availability to move or to get your own place, of course you can do that, but typically that might be something that takes time. But the mind is the kind of system that very often it doesn't actually need everything to be completely sorted, but at least if you have a plan in place, and typically taking pen to paper or using your device to map that out in a semi-clear way can be really, really helpful. Now again, you don't need to know everything, and it can be flexible, it can change. But if you kind of go, okay, here's where I am, this is where I'd like to be in terms of maybe having my own place, what are the key steps I could take to get there, and how can I get going on those now? So if you have a feeling that you're doing something every day that's moving you in that direction, that's good. It tends to feel really nice for your system, and it tends to feel a bit more pacifying. So you might be quite there, but you have a feeling that you're moving in a direction. Very often it just gets that bit more uncomfortable when you kind of think, oh, I'm just stuck here, there's no end in sight. It might be a long road or a short road. We don't necessarily know that in advance, but at least if you have that sense of, here is the direction, here are the steps, that gives you a feeling of control back again to some extent, which can be rather useful. The other thing is, in the meantime, as you're taking some of those practical steps, is find local space. Because sometimes even a little space can go a long way. And the question is, how can you make that space your own? So if you have a room, how can you use that space in an efficient way? Sometimes we think, well, I'm here for a while, so I might as well give up. But no, using that space, even if it is just in a temporary way, setting it up in a way that works for you, it doesn't really need to be about time or money necessarily. Very often it's about thoughtfulness. It's about thinking, what are the main uses of this space, even if it's a very small space? Even if you were sharing a room with other people, you can say, okay, well, my little corner of the room here, how can I set this up in a way that works for my purposes? Is there somewhere I can sit when I'm maybe writing or typing? A good place to lie down, a good place to sit. And as much as your space allows, good behavioral conditioning is typically about having different places, or at least different modes that you can be in while doing those different things. If you're kind of lying in bed and you're watching films and trying to plan your life and trying to talk on an important business call, there can be a little bit of behavioral conditioning conflict there between those different modes. Again, not always possible to change, but if you have to, for example, do everything in your bed, at least what you could do is maybe sit up sometimes and lie down others, or even sometimes just dressing differently. But you kind of want to get yourself into that different headspace so that it's not all just a blur. It's this, then that, and you're kind of moving in and out of those different modes. That can be really useful. So finding local space, and part of that is indoors, part of it's outdoors as well, because sometimes while it is true we do need to have a little space for ourselves, still you can really enjoy the world. You don't need to own the world in order to really appreciate it. So there can be special places you can go, and there can be things you do or people that you connect with physically or virtually that also gives you some sense of space and comfort too, and helps kind of offset some of the challenges that might be there from being at home. And the other thing that we always have available to us is finding some inner space. And what that really means is, in a very simple way, there's no reason why you can't stop when you have a moment and just picture what it's like to have the room that you want to have. To start to maybe visualize a little bit down the road how you would like things to be, in a realistic way. And of course, that will help you clarify what some of the steps are then to take. But there's no reason why you can't start to enjoy that a little bit more right now. Because mindset is very powerful and very important here. It's possible to have lots of space but not feel it. You could feel restricted. It's also, again, not to put you off in terms of your ideas of having space, but you can have somebody who has the mortgage and has the house, and they feel a lack of space in another way because they don't get to be in the house because they're busy working to pay for it. So again, not to dissuade you, that can be valid, and there's plenty of people who have mortgages and are happy as well. But it's just interesting to consider that, what it is to really have room and to have space internally as well as externally. Put a bit of a good environment together as best you can in the circumstances you're in, but also to create a bit of that inner space as well. And this tends to be a bit of a win-win, because if you have a little bit more of that inner space, either visualizing it or just feeling it, that helps you find it outside a little bit more, either by creating it or just by making do, I suppose, with what's available to you in that moment, just as best as you can. And that space then that you create externally, if you're laying things out a bit more, or if you're taking practical steps to get your own place, that in turn probably makes you feel internally a bit better and frees you up that way. So all those small steps are adding up in a useful way. If you found this valuable, do like, subscribe, and share. And what's your experience? Do you have any questions or topic suggestions? You can contribute in the comments, on social media using #bodymindself, or at jfl.com.